Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Leadership Void podcast. I'm Enrique with my co host Vince to bring you the best in our veteran, military spouse, and first responder community. And Vince will introduce today's guest.
Thanks, Enrique. All the way from Alpharetta, Georgia, we have Joel Thor Neeb. He's the co-founder of the Insight Age. So, Thor, welcome to the show. Start off. Tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you, Vince. Really appreciate being here. So my background in under a minute is I went to the Air Force Academy, graduated, thank you, sir, back in 1999, went to flight school, and then, of course, everybody knows immediately after that, 2001 happened. So we're all thrust into war. I am just training to become a fighter pilot. At that point in time, I flew F-15s operationally. And then I had the shock of my life and found out I had stage 4 cancer in 2010. Everything was going great for me and had a detour to contend with for a little bit of time. I was one of the very, very few people who gets a second chance from stage 4 cancer. And although I got back into the cockpit and was able to fly again and could have continued flying, I elected to leave the military at 15 years, go into the business world, joined a consultancy through some luck, timing, and good results, was the CEO of that consultancy for about 8 years, and then went to our largest customer, which was VMware, and then wrapped up a transformation at VMware as we got ready to be acquired by Broadcom, helped us transform from software vendor to software as a service company. And then once that completed, I launched my own company to help other organizations prepare for the AI-driven insight age.
Well, it's good to hear that you did get through that challenge, a very scary challenge as it is, but we're glad to have you with us. And you didn't mention a couple of things in there, but we'll give you an opportunity later because it's interesting, your journey post-service. And thank you for that service. Obviously, we're all service members here on this episode. But tell us a little bit more about your company, Insight Age, and what you're doing with it.
Sure. So we helped VMware, this massive software company, overcome a lot of its challenges from what we call operational debt, cultural debt, and data debt. And I'll talk about each one of those a little bit. Operational debt is the result of companies doing more acquisitions in the past 10 years than in the history of the world. What that means is we bolted on different companies onto our company, different cultures on top of that, different processes. And at that point in time, we didn't integrate them intentionally, meaning we told them, hey, keep doing what you're doing, new company we just acquired, because we want to go fast and you keep your tools, you keep your processes, keep your culture, keep your leadership style, do everything the same. We're just going to give you more resources to go even faster. And it was a brilliant business model for a long time until the market decided they were no longer buying products. They were buying outcomes that happened to include our products, which required us to be much more coherent operationally, internally. And so that was the operational debt we had to overcome very quickly, just like every big tech company out there. The cultural debt was a result of that era, which really siloed each of our organizations, first along product lines, but then along functional lines. And then we had the pandemic hit. Everybody retreated to home and stared into Zoom cameras like this. And so our sense of team across the organization was dwindling away as time went on. And so we found ourselves very, very isolated and siloed. And our cultural debt was the next thing to overcome, is now, once again, we're being called to look very coherent to the market. And then finally, the data debt. All that means is we just have 1,000 different tools to do the same things. And we tell everybody, use your custom tool, use whatever makes sense for you, put data in the same place. And we allowed them to do that over and over again, which created data debt, which didn't allow us to have a common view of the company across the organization. So those three big things, organizational debt in the form of operational debt, cultural debt, and data debt, all added up to create a mountain-sized pile of debt we had to overcome in order to be successful in this next chapter as the market was shifting in a new direction. And so to bring it back to this new company I launched, we helped VMware to overcome all of that debt. And we did that with 100 other tech companies while I was a consultant. And so now we have a template by which we can help these teams streamline and optimize their organization. And that was important pre-AI. It was critical before AI that we did that, because the market's demanding that coherence and that we show up selling outcomes and not just products and features. But it's an imperative with AI, because as AI starts to come down the pipe and we get better technological insights from that AI, only those companies that have been optimized in the way I just described will be ready for the insight age. And the insight age is this new chapter that we're entering, whereby we're leaving the information age. And I can tell looking at you both that you remember the information age coming on board, and you remember what it was like before we had a phone in our pocket that could answer any question. And you remember when information was valuable. I always like to use the analogy that in 1993, if I wanted to remember who won the World Series in 1955, I'd think about it for a while and I'd argue with my friends about who it was. And then we had this one friend, Andy, who knew sports trivia better than anyone else. And I would call up Andy finally once we couldn't figure it out amongst our friends. We'd say, Andy, settle this argument for us. Who won the World Series in 1955? And Andy would roll his eyes and say, that was the New York Yankees, and that was Mickey Mantle, and here's what they did, because he knew all this sports facts and all this trivia. He had the information that was valuable at that point in time. Andy's phone hasn't rang in a long time, except to hang out. Certainly hasn't rang on sports trivia issues, because I had that same answer in 10 seconds on my phone. We all understand that, but that information that all of a sudden is no longer valuable because it's immediately accessible to everyone is the same thing that's going to happen through AI to ideas, to insights. So in other words, the same way we no longer call Andy for sports trivia and facts, our brilliant ideas, our brilliant insights are no longer going to be valuable, because we're all going to have access to the same technology that can yield those same insights. Hence, we're entering the insight age where insights become commoditized.
I love this. It makes me reflect on knowledge is power, right? That's what you were referring to back then. Now it has shifted. So I kudos to you for even thinking ahead and having the internal fortitude to go ahead and, provide this opportunity, because it's coming and it's here. So love to hear from you now, since you have this journey of the entrepreneurship life cycle. What challenges or lessons learned you like to share with those who are just starting out in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, just starting out in entrepreneurship, here's what I would say. I'll give you an example from my life. I was in 2012, just getting back into the cockpit after having stage 4 cancer, and ecstatic that I was flying again. But I was going back into something that I knew very, very well. It was my comfort zone, effectively, right? And so even though I was flying faster than the speed of sound and flying upside down with friends, it was still something that I had programmed into my rote memory, and it was, for all practical purposes, easy to do. Just like anything can become easy to do after we've done it enough times. Why do I say it that way? Because when I jumped into the business world next, I was the dumbest guy in every conversation I had about business. And so I went from a world that I knew exceptionally well to a world I didn't know at all. And I'm in business school with brilliant people who had just led different lives for the past 10 years and weren't in airplanes and talking about missiles and turn rates. And because of that, they just had all of this experience and even just a vernacular and a vocabulary that I didn't have. So where am I going with this for, as an entrepreneur prepares? What I learned from this is that I had to do a ton to catch up, and I would just consume every book I could read. I didn't read a book for 10 years while I was in the military. I did a lot of studying, and so it's not like I didn't read things. I was reading in the vault and, top secret information and tactics, but I didn't read a single book for 10 years. And now all of a sudden I'm reading at least a book a week on the subject of business and how to get better at it. Here's what I realized. It really is a superpower. You can become an expert in anything, just given, once again, that access to information. The information age has changed everything. It's given equitable access to every person on the planet that has access to the internet to have the same information and the same path to becoming a master level expert, but so few do it. And so as an entrepreneur, the more you can just consume yourself with learning about your craft and talking to others about it, the better equipped you'll be once you go into the market and launch it. So I'm not saying to pause and wait, because you'll never feel ready. You'll never feel like, all right, now I've consumed enough information. This is the day I'm going to go launch. I actually say the opposite: launch and continue to prepare, but also consume yourself with information about your industry, about your business, about the success stories that are already out there. And you'll be amazed at how quickly you find yourself going from the dumbest person in the room, like I was, to a mastery level conversation, because you've devoted that just a little bit more to learning about it than the rest of the crowd. And that's all it takes.
Yeah, and that's a powerful way to address those learning gaps, right? Because we all have them when we go from one place to another. As we all transition from the military to civilian life, something we knew nothing of for quite a while, it ended up being like that. We was trying to get in conversations where we just like did not have the context. We, I could tell you about drills, and I could tell you about cadence, and I could tell you about weapons, but this thing called community and things like that in the open form, it was kind of strange. But I love it. And I think about the time in Neo, they plug it in the back of his head. He's like, I know kung fu. It's like, it may come to that one day, who knows.
Yeah.
But we're in that age where information is still vital, but you're telling it as it is. It has been taken over by processes and technology to the point where you're not carrying that value anymore, and it's important to get there, right? And I love how you put that. Now, you started Inside Age. What's on the horizon for the company?
Yeah, great question. So we kind of stumbled into starting this company as well. And to be totally frank, I haven't even announced the company launch publicly. So if you go to my LinkedIn right now, you won't see me as a co-founder of the Inside Age. You won't see any information about us. You'll see that we're writing a book called The Inside Age. But here's what's taken place over the last 6 months. As we completed the acquisition, and I had an opportunity to have some time off after a successful close of that acquisition with VMware by Broadcom, I thought I was going to take some time off and hang out with the family. Maybe do a couple of presentations here or there for this concept of preparing companies for AI and the Inside Age, the book. But as I started having these dialogues with executives, I quickly realized that what we had accomplished previously at VMware and at other companies was exactly the template that every company needed to pursue right now. And it was what was on every executive's mind as they considered, how do I get ready and how do I get my organization ready for the AI-driven Inside Age? So we realized we're just going to have to wrap a company around this. We're going to have to lead transformations from the inside. We're going to have to do keynote presentations. And so literally without any marketing whatsoever, or telling anybody we're even doing this, organically, this is all developed just through our network. And so now we're at a point where we're pretty much at capacity to deliver on this. I'm doing a keynote a week. We're working with several large companies on leading their transformations from within for this purpose. And so that's where we're at right now with the Inside Age. What's our future? Well, we're going to announce the company launch soon. And so we'll see what happens then. I anticipate that this is just one of those moments where everyone's thinking about the same concept. It won't last forever. Maybe this is a 2 to 3 year shelf life of this deep need that companies have to make these transformations. But right now we do have a tiger by the tail, and we're going to lean into this and help out as many organizations as possible. We're in the process of hiring and getting others on board for it. And I'm very confident that literally a page is turning in terms of chapters right now. We are moving out of one chapter and into another. Just as in 1997 or so, we moved out of just the digital era and went into the .com era. And we all know how disruptive that was. We're about to experience the same thing again, I believe on a larger scale. And so I want to help guide others through that process. My co-founder and I call ourselves Transformation Sherpas. And so over the next few years, we want to help as many companies as possible complete their transformations and continue developing our expertise. One day we'll own many companies that have overcome this transformation as well, but that's in the horizon.
Thank you for everything you stated there. Transformation Sherpa. Amen. I love hearing that terminology. I also reflect back to the BlackBerry and the iPhone. When that all transformed. The world wasn't ready, but they needed it. Steve Jobs knew it was time, and you guys are the Sherpas know it's time now. So I love hearing that. So let's transition, talk a little bit. And also thank you for the exclusive. Here we are. The Inside Age is coming to you theater near you, like they stated. You read a book a week and talk about developing and sharpening your skill sets. What else do you do to sharpen your skill sets to aid you in your professional life?
Yeah, so great question. A lot of people talk about work-life harmony, work-life balance, and when you say balance, for me that feels like a give and take. In other words, I give more into my work, I subtract from my family life or personal life, and I'm constantly measuring where that line falls on a spectrum. How much family am I going to be able to engage with, and how much work am I going to be able to engage with? I use a different framework. I talk about work-life harmony. And harmony means that I don't have to compromise on one or the other, and I can find that resonance. So in music, harmony is where two notes combine to make something better than they were before, right? And we all understand that. But in our lives, we can create the right combination without compromising on things to create an even better life, a harmonic life for ourselves. So where am I going with this? For me, it's about the right level of devotion to personal fitness, to spiritual health, to my family, and to my business pursuits, so that all of those things combine to create the life that I want to live forever, and not taking from one and giving to another. How do I live that way? I bring my kids on a lot of business trips. I took my wife to San Francisco last week, and I attended a board meeting, and we had celebrated an anniversary and spent time together while we were out on this trip, and had an amazing time. I'll bring my kids to Australia at the end of the month, where I'm going to do a keynote on the Inside Age in Sydney. We're also going to go surfing in Sydney and go, climb the Blue Mountains out there. And so at all times, I'm looking for opportunities to have that right balance. Another fun thing is that my dad, who's 76, and my son, who's 16, are both joining with me this year to try out for American Ninja Warrior, that TV show. Have you ever seen it? And all three of us are completing our application videos as we speak. We recorded yesterday. It was a lot of fun. And I love to bring them on these types of journeys. I've been on it 4 times. And so my son, who's much better than me at this today, is going to probably do better than me on the course. Hopefully this doesn't come out and he hears that, because we've been having a good friendly rivalry going on it. And my dad is doing it at 76. And he's under no delusion that he's going to win, but he's doing something that's amazing at 76 years old, getting his body ready for this moment. And he's doing an incredible job. And it's just a lot of fun for us to go do it. So long story short, I try to find a little bit of everything that adds up into more than the sum of its parts for me.
And that's a wonderful approach to have. And I applaud it, because there's a lot of folks in the business world that just can't find that dance, right? That delicate dance and harmony between those two aspects. Now, you shared some advice there for that work-life harmony, and I'm sure that you've gotten advice throughout the years, both in service and in the business world, that you would like to share with an emerging leader today.
Yeah, the advice I'd give an emerging leader today, and specifically one that's coming from the military, is to say, I'll go back into my story. I was the best at what I did for my point in time. I was a lieutenant colonel leaving the Air Force. I had flown 3,000 missions by this point. And just by the nature of that amount of time, I was typically the best, most experienced pilot in every formation that I flew, right? So I'm constantly surrounded by people that are learning from me. And it was very humbling to then go into this next chapter where, once again, I'm the dumbest guy in the room and I know very little about the conversations that I'm having with folks. And so that can be a hit to the ego. That can be just extra challenging as you consider, hey, I was leading in this environment where lives were on the line, and I was very successful there. And we're just talking about selling widgets over in this other conversation, and yet I'm terrible at that. And what I would tell folks leaving the military is just be prepared for that, and accept that that's going to be that case, and then put it in your mind that you're going to re-undergo whatever qualification process you did in the military. So for me, that was, basic training and flight school and F-15 school, all horrible programs that I had to work my tail off to complete, just like all of us did. And what I would tell, folks, men and women leaving the military, is you're going to do that again. and you did it once, and you can do it again. You're a little bit older, you might have a few more gray hairs, but you can do it again. The good news is you're not going to be, running around with a rifle, but you are going to have the same level of exertion that you did at that young age when you qualified and surprised yourself with how amazingly you can show up for that occasion. So you got to steel yourself up for this. So this same mentality you brought to that moment is the mentality I want you to bring to this transformation that's going to be equally transformative for you as you switch chapters from the military into the business world. That's number one. Number two is to say, all of that time is not for naught, meaning all the time you had in the military is not just lost time. If you listen to me in the beginning of this podcast and I talked about how I was the dumbest guy in the room, you might say, well, why'd you even join the military? It sounds like that's bad advice to, waste your time and miss all of the learnings that are taking place in these other career fields and then try to play catch up. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Because as soon as you've trained yourself and re-undergone, whatever it takes for you to catch up a bit, you'll never catch up fully to those folks that have spent a decade doing this. Once you speak the same vocabulary, once you understand the same nuances, you have this whole other chapter of leadership and experiences to bring to this new fight that no one else has. And so you are going to blow their minds with all the ideas you have, because not another person in the room is going to be able to talk in the same terms you are. But you got to earn that right. And the way you earn that is by transforming yourself first and learning the vocabulary, learning the nuances, educating yourself just enough so that you can say, this reminds me of the time when, back in Afghanistan, this took place. This reminds me of the time when I had to lead a team through this. And people are going to say, oh my gosh, this is something unlike anyone else can bring to the table. We're going to have to reward this, with better leadership positions, with more business. You'll be amazed at the insights you have that others don't.
No, absolutely. I reflect back and think about the skill sets, right? We develop skill sets from 0 to 100 in the military, come out, and now we back to 0. But we now have also human skills, that emotional intelligence skills that everyone wants and yearns for. And the military teaches us about team building, teaches about, internal fortitude, about, honor or loyalty. So we get a lot of that also because it's so important in our society today. So I love how you expressed it and how you shared with our audience about that lesson learned. Great advice to give. Now, how about a leadership memorable aha moment you've had that you like to share with our audience as well?
Sure. An aha moment for me, I have a lot of leadership lessons learned, and I think they always come from the challenges, right? We had a great flight instructor, Fisher was his call sign, and he was the one we all hated when we went through flight school. And that was because when you'd fly with him, you'd have the experiences where you felt like you were going to die. Like you would do a rejoin on another airplane and you would screw it up because you're learning how to do it and you're making lots of mistakes. And whereas another instructor would have taken the controls away from you and said, no, here's how you do it, and show you earlier, he would allow you to get much closer to the aircraft and scare you a little bit, right? And so you're constantly just have your eyes wide in fight or flight mode while you're doing these missions with him. And we hated it. And then I became an instructor. After I finished flight school, I became an instructor on the other side. And I went and talked to him about this. And I said, why did you, take us to this limit and scare everybody like this? Like it's inappropriate. And two, it's just not the way to teach. He said, I disagree. He said, first of all, you were never in any harm's way. And he said, here's the factor of safety that I have on everything that I do. And he was 100% right. I just was not good enough pilot at the time to know that he was actually preserving a very, very replicable factor of safety that now I can prove over and over again. But then two, he said, the lessons come from the low points. And if you're going to remember it, it's got to sting a little bit. And I thought, gosh, that is so true. Like the things that have transformed me in life are the low points. Like I don't get much transformation out of the accolades. Like the few times I've won in life or done really well aren't the times I think to myself, and then I transformed and became this. It's always in the valleys. It's always in the worst points of life, whether personally or professionally, that true lasting positive change comes. And of course, we carry scars from those moments as well. So it's not all good. I don't want to sugarcoat it, but at the same time, we have the opportunity to pursue what they call post-traumatic growth out of those moments that sting. And that's where we have the greatest amount of growth from those challenges. So that's all I'll lead up to tell you the story of one of the many times I failed as a leader. When I was a first young instructor pilot and was now teaching in the flight training program that I had graduated from, I remember that what I had wanted to bring to the experience from my students was I was going to be the approachable flight instructor. I was going to be the one I wished I had, because my flight instructors always kept us at an arm's length. They never really got close to us or really leaned into our training. They felt more like they were there as referees and less as coaches in this experience. And so, you grew to resent that a little bit, wishing you had more development and just somebody that was helping you out a little bit. And so I did that. I was that instructor. I was everybody's best friend, and got to know this team of men and women really well as a flight instructor. And then fast forward 3 or 4 months, and I'm having some discipline challenges with them, and they're not respecting me. And compared to all the other instructors, they're kind of walking over me a bit, and they're not following through on what they're committing to do. And I'm not really fully holding them accountable for this, because once again, I want to be that approachable instructor, and let's do this together. And I'm going to help you, you help me. It was a great lesson at about 24 years old for me, that a leader's responsibility at all times is to provide 2 things: love and boundaries. And the love can be in the form of helping people out, but can also be in the form of accountability. The boundaries is keeping a healthy distance between you and your team at all times, even if that's uncomfortable, even if these are the people you wish you could hang out with and spend more time with. You can spend time with them, but you have to be the one that's going to lead them through the hard times. And in order to do that, and in order to hold them accountable and give them those moments that sting a little bit, you're going to have to keep some distance between you and them. And that's difficult. As a human, you just want to be closer to people. And it's, heavy is the head that wears the crown. And that's one of the challenges you just have to endure for the privilege of leadership. And so you're going to have to find your peer group somewhere else, other leaders, other groups that you're going to spend time with. For some people, this is common sense. And you're saying, well, yeah, why would you hang out with the people that you're coaching? And in the military, though, we know that is something we have to build, that healthy boundary between us and in the folks that we're training and leading, because we're going to ask very difficult things of them at some point. It was a great lesson for me early on about the importance of that boundary.
And boundaries are important. If you overstep some of those, it could be very detrimental, especially in the leadership arena. And I love that you say, there's a privilege to leadership. And sometimes you have to remain at arm's length for the sake of the growth of the person that you're leading. And so thank you for sharing that. Now, you are a man that overcame probably one of the greatest challenges that we can face as mortals, right? The impending circumstance of cancer, and at that stage. So thank God that you did, and we are able to speak with you today. But what are certain strategies when it comes to times of change and challenges that you have employed that you would like to share with the audience today?
Yeah, great question. And it's really about leading through chaos, right? And it's whether that's the chaos of battle or the chaos of a cancer diagnosis. I think a lot of the principles are the same. And the first one, so now I'm very active in the cancer community for the particular cancer that I had, and constantly talking to people about it. I was just exchanging numbers with somebody yesterday about connecting for a new diagnosis this person had. And a couple of things that I always tell them when you're dealing with chaos and challenges like this. One, give yourself permission to have that pity party for a little bit. Meaning it's okay to be upset about this. And, as military people, we try to put on our stoic face and just grin and bear it. And I don't think that's always healthy. I think we need to go inside and kick a pillow and be upset about that this is happening to us, and that this isn't fair, and that you don't deserve this, and that you've done things that should have mitigated this and not had this happen. And that's totally fine. You have your pity party. You need to get that out. But at some point, you need to decide that the pity party is going to end, and you're going to work on whatever's left. And so for me, whatever was left was, I don't know how much longer I have to live. I went through a pity party for about 3 weeks. I figured I had about 18 months to live, because that's what they told me with a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. And so I decided, whatever life I have left, I'm going to make the most of it and try to find happiness in each day. And so it's amazing once the pity party's over with and you commit yourself to something. There's a great quote from Nietzsche who says, he who has a strong enough why can overcome any how. And so for me, my why was my family, my kids, and the, just the experience that I want to provide them for the next 17, 18 months. And overcoming the how of figuring out how to be happy in this environment was easily done. Something that would be the most daunting thing in my life was easily done because I had that type of purpose behind what I was doing. I was amazed at how happy I could be in some of those days. I look back at it still and think that I can't imagine the stress I was under and still finding like some of my happiest memories and the hardest I've laughed, the most fun times I've had with people during that time frame. And it was such a great lesson for me that our mind frame changes everything, and that it's really about the mentality we bring to any challenge that determines the experience, to the extent that you can even have a good experience, good in air quotes, while you're going through a nightmare like that, because you choose to endure it in a certain way. And it wasn't me faking it. It wasn't me, just looking at the bright side. It was literally just a switch flipping in my mind that said, I'm going to choose happiness every day. And once I decided that, it was amazing how I was able to find it.
I would say to the audience, this is a book and a movie in the making, folks. Get ready because it's coming. You shared a lot of very good wisdom for both professionally and personally. And I see in the the harmony between both of them. And it's so great to have you with us today. This was a great episode, Joel. Love to know more about how to get a hold of you for our audience and as well as the Insight Age.
Fantastic. So if you want to read more about that cancer journey, and then more importantly, what I learned on the other side of it, wrote a book called Survivor's Obligation that you can pick up, and it talks about the obligation I carry as one of the unique survivors of stage 4 cancer to live my life differently on the other side of that battle and what that looks like. And then the insightage.com is where you can learn more about the upcoming book, as well as the company that we're launching. You'll see stuff on that in the next couple of weeks. And then finally, I'm on LinkedIn the most. You can find me on, Instagram and other places, but I'm most interacting with folks on LinkedIn. So just go connect with me, Joel Thor Neeb, on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with everybody. I have a lot of conversations with folks in direct messages because of these types of podcasts. And so don't hesitate to reach out. I enjoy helping others, and that's one of the things I committed myself to.
Outstanding. Well, folks, we will have that as part of the show notes and video for you to be able to get a hold of Joe. If you'd like to get a hold of us at the Leadership Void Podcast, the Leadership Void at gmail.com is where you'll send that correspondence. If you like a speaker, a guest, or a topic on leadership covered, that's how you'll do it.
Hey, thank you, Enrique. Joel, it was wonderful to hear all about you, but we also honored to have our sponsors, Triple Nickel, FAVOB, and A Hero for Kids. Today, also all about Joel, the Inside Age, and Enrique and I are just so blessed to have him today. Thank you very much.